Welcome back to Grifter or Gifted. Are they changing the world or just lining their pockets?
Yeah, it's a question for the ages, isn't it?
It really is. And
Right.
this week, we're diving into Tom Girardi,
Oh, Tom Girardi.
once celebrated lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
fame, fortune, reputation for fighting for the little guy.
Uh-huh.
But we know how it all came crashing down.
Yeah.
Convicted on wire fraud.
Yeah. It's a story that makes you think, you know? Ambition, greed, that line between brilliance and deception. It's
It's really thin sometimes.
very thin, very thin.
So let's rewind. Tom Girardi,
Uh,
born and raised right here in L.A., started out as a medical malpractice lawyer. And get this, he was inspired to go into law by Terry Mason.
oh, wow.
Ironic, right?
Yeah, big contrast, you know? Perry Mason, justice always wins. Not quite the case with Girardi.
No, not quite. But early on, it seemed like he was living that Perry Mason dream. 1970, just a few years in, boom, $1.4 million verdict. Biggest one of its kind in California at the time.
I bet that got him noticed.
Oh, yeah. Forced to be reckoned with.
Uh-huh.
And then he gets known for these toxic torts cases. Environmental pollution, harmful products, that sort of thing.
Right.
For those of us who aren't lawyers, though, break down toxic torts. What makes those so tricky?
Okay, so these cases often mean proving that big companies, with all their lawyers and money, were negligent. Basically, proving they knowingly put people at risk.
David versus Goliath.
Exactly. And Girardi, he was winning multi-million-dollar settlements.
And then there's that 1996 case, Pacific Gas and Electric, water contamination in Hinckley,
Aaron Brockovich.
the one and only.
Yeah.
So you've got this lawyer fighting for the ordinary people, taking on a giant company,
And winning.
big time.
Yeah.
Makes you think one person really can make a difference.
Oh, absolutely. He became the champion of the people, the lawyer who could take on the powerful.
And the awards, they just start rolling in. The Trial Lawyer Hall of Fame in 2003, Trial Lawyer of the Decade. Even appointed to the California Judicial Council. They set policy for the state courts.
Wow. Talk about respect from the legal world. He wasn't just successful, he was seen as a leader.
So at this point, Girardi has it all. Career, reputation, influence. Like something out of Shakespeare.
The rise to power.
But then, the fall, and it's a doozy.
It's a big one.
It really is.
It really is. Because, see, beneath all that success, the cracks were starting to show. Late 2000s, complaints start piling up against Girardi with the California State Bar.
Hold on, complaints. What kind of complaint?
Improper finances, misconduct, questions about how he was handling client money. But somehow, he kept it all quiet. For years.
How, what? I mean, was it his reputation, all those connections?
Maybe. This guy, he was a networking pro, charm, charisma, you name it. Judges, politicians, even celebrities, he knew them all. That kind of influence can really smooth things over.
It's like he built this fortress around himself. Charm and connections, deflecting the heat.
Could be. But his firm, Girardi Keese, they had a different problem brewing. Money troubles. End of 2020, deep financial trouble.
And that's right when his wife, Erika Jayne, filed for divorce, right?
Oh.
November 2020. What a mess.
Yeah, the timing is interesting, especially with that lavish lifestyle Erika Jayne was known for. Designer everything, parties, private jets. You saw it all on Real Housewives.
In California, it's a community property state.
Huh?
Meaning spouses, they're on the hook for each other's debts from the marriage. Makes you wonder, where was all that money coming from?
Investigators, that's what they're trying to figure out. But then December 2020, boom, that lawsuit hits, changes everything.
The one alleging Girardi embezzled money meant for families of the Lion Air Flight 610 victims.
That's the one. House of Cards starts falling apart. A federal judge freezes all of Girardi's assets, rules he took at least $2 million, client funds, gone.
Misappropriation of funds. Some people might not know what that means exactly.
It's basically taking money that's supposed to be used for one thing and pocketing it for yourself. Girardi, they accused him of using settlement money meant for his clients to fund his lifestyle, the high life.
And these weren't just any clients. These were people who had been through hell and back. Families of plane crash victims, burn victims, people who had lost children in accidents, relying on Girardi for justice.
It's a betrayal of the worst kind. The people you're supposed to be fighting for, you're stealing from.
How does someone even do that? Especially someone who built their entire career on being a champion for the underdog. It's mind-boggling.
That's the big question in all of this, isn't it? This guy achieved so much, seemed driven by helping others. How did it end up like this?
And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. Over 200 complaints against him with the California State Bar over the years.
This wasn't a good guy making a mistake, no. This was a pattern. Deceit, manipulation, spanning decades.
So how did he get away with it for so long? Were there warning signs? Did the system fail to protect these people?
The California State Bar, they have been under fire for how they handled the Girardi case. Critics say they were way too slow to act. Let Girardi keep practicing law, even with all those red flags.
And now, after all of this, they've made some changes, trying to make the disciplinary process stronger. But is that enough? Can we really stop something like this from happening again?
That's the debate, isn't it? Some say it's not nearly enough. We need a bigger shift in how the legal world polices its own.
It's scary, you know? Even people in power, those supposed to uphold the law, they can exploit those they're meant to protect.
And it raises the question, was he alone in this? Or were there people who knew but looked the other way?
Which brings us to Chris Kamon, Girardi's former CFO. Indicted for embezzling something like $50 million from Girardi Keese.
Kemon's trial, that's still coming up. We'll see what comes out, whether he tries to point the finger at Girardi, say he was just following orders.
Right, because then there's this whole other layer. Alzheimer's and dementia. How much did his declining mental state have to do with any of this? And will he even be able to testify in Kamon's trial?
Legal experts, they're trying to figure that out. His cognitive decline, could it have affected his judgment? Maybe. But by how much? No one knows for sure.
So we have this brilliant lawyer facing the music, but also battling a serious illness. Tragic, but it reminds you, even the biggest names, they're human. Flaws, vulnerabilities, the whole deal.
And it leaves us with this uncomfortable question. How do we reconcile the good he did early on with the harm he caused later? Can we acknowledge the victories while condemning the crimes?
Tough balance to strike. But we have to face it, because this isn't just about one man's fall. It's about the systems that allowed this to happen, the enablers and the victims still seeking justice.
And we can't just rely on fancy titles or big reputations to judge someone's character. We have to dig deeper, ask the tough questions, hold people accountable no matter how powerful they seem.
Speaking of accountability, let's talk about Erika Jayne.
Yeah.
Filed for divorce right as the scandal exploded. Perfect timing. Or something more.
Well, she's saying she didn't know anything about it, about his schemes, but yeah, that timing is definitely suspicious. And don't forget, she was leaving the high life off his money.
Yeah, all that Real Housewives extravagance, the clothes, the parties, the private jets, it adds up fast. And now investigators are trying to figure out if any of that came from, well, Girardi's victims.
Following the money trail, see if there's a link between his embezzlement and her lifestyle.
So even though she hasn't been charged, could she still be held responsible for his debts?
It's tricky. California community property state, right, usually means spouses are liable for each other's debts during the marriage, but there are exceptions. And her lawyers, they're probably arguing she was in the dark, didn't know anything, so she shouldn't have to pay.
So that's a whole other legal battle brewing. And then there's the bankruptcy of Girardi Keese, his firm.
Yeah. The bankruptcy trustee, they're trying to get back as much money as they can to pay back everyone he owes, including the victims. And they're going after anyone who got money from Girardi or the firm, Erika Jayne included.
It really is like a Greek tragedy. Ambition, greed, leading to this huge downfall. And it's not just Tom Girardi who's paying the price.
It's a reminder that these crimes, they have ripple effects. Families, communities, our whole legal system, it's all affected.
It makes you think, how do we stop this from happening again? How do we protect ourselves from these predators?
That's where being careful comes in. Really paying attention. Need a lawyer. Handling your finances. Do your homework. Check their background, their history. See if there have been any complaints.
Trust your gut, too. Something feels wrong. Someone pushing you to sign something you don't get. Do they seem more interested in their cut than in you? Those are red flags.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. Get a second opinion. You have the right to know what's going on to make sure someone's looking out for you.
This whole case, it's been a wild ride. Twists, turns, legal battles, ethical dilemmas, you name it. It shows you what happens when ambition goes unchecked, how complicated the legal system can be, and the terrible consequences of betrayal.
And it reminds us that even the people who seem to be fighting for the little guy, the ones who say they're all about justice, they can fall prey to greed and power.
So where does Tom Girardi land? Grifter or gifted? Seems like he was a bit of both. A legal mind, winning big for his clients, but also a master manipulator, using his charm and connections to deceive and take advantage of people.
It's a cautionary tale. Never take trust for granted. Always be on your guard. And hold those in power accountable.
Well said. That brings us to the end of another deep dive. We hope you found it informative and maybe got you thinking. Until next time, stay curious and stay skeptical.